Councillor Anne-Marie Humphreys.
Good morning, everybody. Sorry about that. Good morning, everybody, including those who are watching proceedings via the webcast. Can I welcome you all to this extraordinary meeting of Salford City Council? And please can I ask you to stand and join me in civic prayers, which this morning will be conducted by the Right Reverend John Arnold, Bishop of Salford. Thank you.
In these days, our nation, the Commonwealth, indeed the people of so many nations of the whole world have been expressing the sense of loss at the news of the death of Queen Elizabeth. Tributes have been paid to the importance of faith in her life, her lifelong devoted service to nation and Commonwealth, her promotion of family, the building of principles of community and well-being for all citizens. For 70 years, she remained an anchor for this nation, promoting its diversity, its democracy, and its progress. These will be continuing days of mourning for many, including the royal family. But it is also a very useful time for reflection. What are the most important qualities of Queen Elizabeth's reign that we need to ensure have a place in our future? We pay the best tribute to her memory by ensuring that the best attributes of her reign live on and are promoted in a challenging world in which we now live. And so, respecting our different faiths and beliefs, we pray. We ask for that sense of vision and direction that excludes no one. We begin here, in this our city, for those for whom the Council have direct responsibility. But we must not be blind to our place in a world faced with challenges of poverty, political persecution, warfare, and climate change. We look for the genuine prosperity, not only for those in the city of Salford, but for our brothers and sisters throughout the world, that we may promote peace and well-being where no one is left behind. We ask for that global vision that will eradicate poverty, provide education and healthcare, promoting peace, security and justice. And we pray for King Charles, that he may promote those best aspects of his mother's reign and pursue those best principles for our nation, the Commonwealth and our world. Amen.
Thank you very much for that, Bishop Arnold. Before we start council, can I ask you to stand and join me in a minute's silence in memory of Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth, after which can you remain standing for the national anthem, which will be performed by Salford in Harmony. Thank you. have be quiet, please? Thank you very much. And can everyone please be seated? Do we have any apologies for today's meeting, please?
Yes, we received apologies from councillors August, Bailey, Barnes, Bellamy, Kamel, Clark, Dickman, Karen Garrido, Robin Garrido, Kelly, Lyndon, Mashita, Morris, Neil Reynolds, Michelle Saeed, Twells, Walters, Ward and Warmisham.
Thank you. Do any members have any personal, prejudicial or disclosable pecuniary interests that they need to declare at this meeting? In which case, can I ask those members to declare them now, please? Thank you. So this extraordinary meeting has been convened following the passing of our longest serving monarch, the late sovereign Queen Elizabeth II, to enable elected members of the council to commemorate and pay tribute to her work. So if council will indulge me, I'm going to start by the tributes, by having a few words from myself. It's really difficult to talk about a monarch who has had so many amazing tributes in her memory just recently. A wholly unique and remarkable person of 70 years of incredible duty and dedicated service to both this nation and to the Commonwealth. But I'll go back to when I had the great honour of lighting the beacon for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee just a few months ago, where at that time I also thought, gosh, what am I going to say about the Queen that hasn't already been said? And my perspective on it was I went back to her being a very young child during the darkest days of the Second World War, when we faced the horrible thought of an invasion from Nazi tyranny. And even as a little girl, she had the sense and the empathy and that skill to do a radio address to the nation with her little sister, to try and cheer and boost the morale of the young children of the nation, to tell them, you know, this time will pass, we will get through this, we will stick together, brighter days will be upon us. And I thought, how remarkable for a young girl to do that. And then, at the young age of 21, she did that very famous speech in South Africa, where she pledged her duty and dedication and devotion to this nation. And she says whether her life be long or short. Well, she had a very long life, thankfully, and she stood with an amazing pledge to that promise of 70 years of, as I say, devoted service. She didn't know that only a few years later she was going to become the monarch, because her father was still only 55, 56 at the time. And she took that on at a very young age when she was not expecting to take that on. She had a very young family at the time, and she was a groundbreaking female head of state at a time when women didn't hold offices of state. They didn't have a prestigious position in society. And she did it with remarkable tenacity, maturity, faithfulness, putting duty above all else, and selflessness. She really was an incredible woman who I have great admiration for. I saw that it was the largest television global audience yesterday. I was reading for the funeral of Her Majesty the Queen, which says it all really, that the whole world tuned in to watch that funeral and to pay tribute. And despite the fact she had to be incredibly impartial and a supreme diplomat, it was very clear during her life that she strove to be a peacemaker and to bring people together, to bring nations together in a very rapidly changing world. You know, her opposition to the horrible apartheid regime in South Africa, her very close friendship with Nelson Mandela, who his grandson recently said she was the only person who called him Nelson, and he was allowed to call her Elizabeth, and that's such a close friendship they had. And just to conclude, I just want to say, from me personally, thank you, Mum, for a whole lifetime of devoted service to this country and to the Commonwealth, and may you rest in peace. Thank you. And can I bring in the City Mayor, please?
So, good morning, Chair and members of the Council. Welcome to this extraordinary meeting of Council following the sad passing of Queen Elizabeth II, Britain's longest-serving monarch. I'm sure each one of us feels a great sense of loss. As an icon of our nation and bedrock of our national identity, bids us farewell. On behalf of this council chamber and the people of Salford, I'd like to send our heartfelt condolences to the royal family, who continue their period of mourning for not only a monarch, but a much-loved mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother. Queen Elizabeth II was loved by many. She was a respected statesperson, regarded highly, not just amongst royalists, but republicans alike. Few statespeople in our world today carry themselves with such solemn duty and dedication as did our departed Queen. Fewer still command the grace and dignity she possessed throughout her reign, the longest of any British monarchy in history, unblemished for decades throughout her reign. Many residents have been signing the Book of Condolences over the last few weeks, and I wanted to share with you all some of the kind messages that have been left, which read, "Thank you for your service, a great loss. Thank you for your example, your smile, humour and service to our country. To our Queen, I hope you know how loved you are. The inspiration you provided to many. Thank you for your service and all that you did for us." We were honoured to welcome Queen Elizabeth to our great city on several momentous occasions over the years, and I'll share with you some of those. In 1954, the Mayor and Mayoress of Salford, Alderman John Lester and Mrs. Lester, waited in the rain on the Crescent to welcome the royal party. Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip visited Salford University and Peel Park. In 1961, crowds gathered for a royal visit, greeted by the Mayor of Salford, Alderman Margaret Whitehead. Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, formally opened the Royal College of Advanced Technology, Salford, based in the newly constructed Maxwell Building. The creation of the Royal College marked a turning point in the history of the institution, as it was one of 10 colleges nationally that gained elevated status and approval to award degree programmes at university level. In 1968, we saw a royal visit to Worsley for Operation Spring Clean, and there are many photos of Her Majesty on our website of this special visit with sea cadets, brownies, scouts, etc., lining the canal. The Coronation Street cobbles also received a royal visit in 1982 and again in 2021. Many of us also in this chamber will remember Her Majesty visiting in 2000 when the Queen and Duke of Edinburgh officially opened the Lowry. Our own Ellis Lowry was appointed as one of the official artists of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II's coronation in 1953, which resulted in his classic work, the procession passing the Queen Victoria Memorial, for those of you who know that painting. In 2002, the Queen officially closed the Commonwealth Games in Manchester and actually spent a night aboard the Royal Train in sidings in Eccles. Thousands of commuters will have passed by, not knowing that the Queen was yards away, sleeping. One of the last visits to Salford was when the Queen visited Media City in 2012 as part of the visit officially opening the country's leading digital and media hub at the university. Though Queen Elizabeth II will visit our great city no more, her memory lives on deeply in the minds of so many of our city's residents and communities. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank our dedicated staff who've worked tirelessly to ensure that the city adheres to protocol throughout this sad period of mourning. There are so many officers that go above and beyond in their roles and responsibilities, and to name a few today: Jeanette Staley and her team, Yolande Puzzio, Michelle Lindsay and her team, Sue Hill and her team, Paul Dyson and his team, and Dave Robinson and his team. Thank you all for your dedication and commitment on behalf of our great city. I'd also like to pay our respects today and pause to remember the former councillor Alice Smythe, who sadly passed away recently. Alice was a councillor from May 1992 to May 2011 and represented Little Halton, as well as being the Deputy Lead Member for Environment. Our thoughts are with her family and friends at this sad time. The flag continues to be flown at half-mast out of respect for one of our much-loved former councillors. Thank you very much.
Can I now call upon Councillor Les Turner for the Conservative Group, please?
Thank you, Chair. I can only say I concur with everything that has been said by the two previous speakers. I'm here today to speak on behalf of Councillor Robin Garrido, the leader of the Conservative group, as opposition leader. I've got a prepared speech. I've only read it once, so you're going to have to bear with me because there's nothing worse than reading someone else's speech. But here we go. I'll do my best. And I haven't had time to spell the grammar, correct the grammar. I think it might be all right. Anyway, we are honoured to be able to pay our tribute today to our most gracious Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. She has served us selflessly during over 70 years of her reign, with total devotion to the United Kingdom, the Commonwealth and the wider world. She has inspired generations of families and people. Indeed, many people in our city have reason to thank her for the example she set. Her never-ending love and faith and her great wisdom have guided us through good times and bad. We recall with fondness Her Majesty's visit to our own area, Worsley, in 1968, when she stood on what we lovingly call the Humpback Bridge between Worsley Green and Barton Road. Hundreds of people and young children lined the banks of the Bridgewater Canal, and of course, these children are now part of our older generation who will recall to this day their fond memories of when she visited Worsley. Her visit followed in a tradition of Queens visiting Worsley, including Queen Victoria in 1851. This memory demonstrates that there was no part of this country she was not happy to visit. Queen Elizabeth supported wholeheartedly the work of her late husband in establishing the Duke of Edinburgh Award Scheme, which has benefited so many of our young people in Salford. Her Majesty's reign covered 15 Prime Ministers, from Winston Churchill to Liz Truss, and not once could she ever be criticised for making any political views known, but indeed acted with great knowledge, which grew over the years in offering support to all her Prime Ministers. If proof was needed of how Her Majesty was held in great esteem by her subjects, you just need to look at the tens of thousands of people who lined the routes from Balmoral to London and finally to her resting place in Windsor Castle. We thank you, Your Majesty, for your years of service and being resolute in abiding to the promise you made so many years ago and from which you have never wavered. It is true that life will never seem quite the same now you have gone, but you will stay within our hearts forever, and we are sure you have left us in the capable hands of your son and heir, King Charles III. It will still be an odd time for many of us, and you will continue to be sadly missed forever. Thank you for the example of duty and honour you leave to those of us left behind. On a personal note, myself and Karen had the honour of being introduced to the Queen at Buckingham Palace, and we were amazed in those short few minutes how she was able to converse with us in some detail on the work we did. A truly amazing lady. I'm sure Her Majesty will always be remembered in the history books, which will undoubtedly record her reign as the greatest of all time. God bless Her Majesty and look after her. God save the King. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. I'm just going to bring in Councillor Alex Warren on behalf of the Lib Dems. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I join all councillors here in expressing my deepest condolences on the passing of Her Majesty the Queen. It's the end of an era, and our United Kingdom is mourning a profound loss. The Queen was a formidable monarch who faithfully served the people of this country for all of her life and was loved the world over. She represented not only duty and courage, but warmth and compassion too. And she was a living reminder of our collective past, of the greatest generation and their sacrifices for our freedom all those years ago. For many people, myself included, Her Majesty was an ever-fixed mark in our lives. As the world changed around us and politicians came and went, she was our nation's constant, and in challenging times, she was a source of calm and comfort, that stiff upper lip that so defines us as Britons in a time of crisis. She tied our nations together, embodying an unwavering pride in our country, showing us that patriotism is not defined by political allegiance, and reminding us of the many things that bind us all together, even when it doesn't always feel that way. We saw this so vividly during the Platinum Jubilee celebrations in June, and I am proud to represent a ward in the city of Salford. Our Jubilee Street party certainly lived up to that status. It was truly wonderful to see such an outpouring of affection from people across Salford, from all walks of life. School children who baked Jubilee cakes, neighbours who shared bunting, choirs, like we saw today, who sang hymns of praise. And it was so incredibly fitting, wasn't it, that after so long kept apart by COVID, it was the Queen and a celebration of Her Majesty's reign that brought our communities back together so joyfully after that period of separation. And just as the whole country is united today, so sadly in grief, the deep mourning across the country now, just like the celebrations of her Jubilee a few months ago, comes not from a sense of duty, but from a genuine, heartfelt affection for Her Majesty, the love and admiration of Her Majesty. It's not because we were her subjects, but it's because she was truly our Queen, our representative for the rest of the world. And what she means to us, different to everybody, each and every one of us, we all have our own meanings. It's best summed up by a phrase on so many people's lips over the last week that I've heard and I myself would find myself saying. I can't imagine our country without her, and that this will take some getting used to. For almost everybody in the country, she has been here our whole lives, certainly for mine. At times of national grief and national jubilation, she has always been there for us. So it's really hard, and I mean this, to accept that she is gone, and hard to see how we can go on without her, but we will. Ma'am, you'll be missed, but your legacy is forever. God bless Her Majesty, and long live the King.
Thank you, Councillor Boyle. And can I bring in Councillor Merry, please?
Thank you. I think it's always difficult for people who've been close to a loved one when they depart. And I just wanted to pause for a moment to think about the humanity of all of this, actually. I was very struck when looking at the children who attended the funeral. I mean, clearly this was the first significant funeral they'd actually attended. And, you know, it was quite amazing to see the way that they deported themselves with such dignity. And I also wanted to pay reference to Alice Smythe, who I worked very closely with while she was with us, because I think in many ways Alice, in a very quiet way, embodied the virtues that we're talking about that the Queen had, and that she actually did that for Salford and delivered it for Salford in a very effective way. But I also would like to talk about my own personal experience, because some of you may be aware, it says so on the notice, I've got a CBE, and it was the Queen who awarded my CBE, and I travelled along thinking this would be a sort of fairly routine investment and I wouldn't have to worry. Imagine my surprise when she started cross-examining me about what was happening in Salford and her personal experiences with Salford. She'd actually prepared for it in a way that was tremendously impressive, actually, and I think, you know, it wasn't just me, she'd done that for everybody, I suspect, who were actually being awarded on that particular day. Finally, I just want to pay tribute to the work she did in bringing the two sides of Ireland together as well. Some of you may have heard the story from the British ambassador to Ireland, who went to see the Irish president, who said, is there a phrase in Irish that she could actually use at the start of her speech? And they said, well, there is, but we decided against it because it's far too difficult. And she said, look, just write it down, and I'll talk to the Queen about it and whether she would deliver it. And, you know, whatever else you feel, I have to say she delivered it impeccably in terms of the speech of reconciliation that she made. And equally, the handshake with Martin McGuinness, I thought, was a profound statement of reconciliation and the way forward. So she wasn't afraid of making bold decisions. She wasn't afraid of doing things that were in the interests of the country. But above all else, she provided stability to us all. Looking around, I think every one of us has probably not known another monarch other than the Queen, actually. I think, so you have. He has. Okay. Well, Arnie, you might be able to brief us on that, but the fact remains that on the whole, you know, we've all had the Queen as our sort of guiding star, and the one thing I am delighted about is the stability that she's brought to the reign and kept us going in that sense. I think it's entirely appropriate that we've had a truce, as it were, from the political shenanigans for this period. I'm sure that will resume shortly. but I think it's right that we paused and actually thought about what we're losing. And, you know, we are losing a great deal, and I just hope that Charles can measure up to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Merry. So I'll open up to councillors. Councillor Fletcher.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I do think all the speeches that have been said so far have been excellent. I'd just like to add my own little part. Mainly, I wrote this on behalf of the Muslim Jewish Forum of Greater Manchester. The Queen was dutiful, devoted, dignified and diligent. They are much used and common words to describe a very unique woman, namely the late Queen, Her Majesty Elizabeth II. Working until 2 days before she passed away was indicative of her great determination and work ethic. From an interfaith perspective, being the co-chair of the Muslim Jewish Forum of Greater Manchester, it is very important to note that she was the first British monarch to visit a UK mosque during her Jubilee celebrations in 2002. She also visited our Manchester Jewish Museum 10 years later. She was a patron of the Holocaust Memorial Day Trust and the Council of Christians and Jews, and was a religious woman who gained much strength from her Christian faith. She will be much missed, having been a constant in virtually all our lives. She will especially be missed by her family, to whom we send our deepest condolences. On a more personal note, I have thought that many people, including myself in particular, complain that we've got to work until we're 66 or 67 years of age. But the late Queen worked diligently and steadfastly until she was 96 years old, and always with a smile on her face. I think that's a lesson to be learnt. I was very lucky to attend a royal garden party in May 2017, and I saw the late Queen at close quarters. Although she was 91 at the time, both my friend and I remarked that she was still very pretty. I would submit she was a beautiful woman, both inside and out. On Monday, watching the funeral, I was upset, not just because of the passing of the Queen, but because it brought back memories of my late maternal grandmother, who had 3 topics of conversation. Number 1, gossiping about the neighbours. Number 2, the latest news from the soaps. And number 3, the royal family. And she would have loved to watch that. And my cousin and I were texting each other saying, I hope Grandma can see this from wherever she is. And also it brought back memories of my dear late father, who, as many of you know, was a true Irishman, but I could hear him saying, oh, nobody does pomp and ceremony like you British. So I was sad on for those points, as well as the funeral. Finally, her exemplary behaviour and strong leadership will undoubtedly guide our new monarch, Charles III, as he embarks on his journey and his reign. As we say in the Jewish faith, may her memory be a blessing. I wish long life to her family, and finish with God save the King. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Could I have Councillor Brabiner, please?
This morning. Well, my mum was 8 years older than Queen Elizabeth, born in King George V's reign. Queen Elizabeth was the first monarch she saw on Bury New Road, Higher Broughton, in the early 1960s. It was pouring with rain, the masses had their umbrellas up. Queen Elizabeth's car passed by. My mum said the Queen waved in her direction. My mum was a royalist. This made her day. So when I told her in Golden Jubilee year 2002 that I was taking a day's holiday from work to go and see the Queen in Manchester, she wished me luck. Arriving early, I managed to get on the front row near Selfridges, standing next to a family with flowers. "We want the Queen," we shouted when she was on the other side. She came over talking to the lady next to me. I took photos. You can see how close I was to her. When I got home, my mum asked, "Did you see her?" Yes. My mum was excited as I was, especially when I got the photos. My one regret was not getting her any flowers, but it was too late. I would have left my front row place to buy some. I saw her again at Royal Ascot at York. I'm a horse racing fan. It was a 40th birthday present from my brother in 2005. Now, my mum had a stroke days before and it was touch and go whether to cancel, but my mum insisted we went. I saw the Queen in the carriage procession, also later in the paddock because she had a runner. It was exciting. At the hospital in the evening, my mum wanted to know everything. I saw the Queen next in 2012 at the Diamond Jubilee in Albert Square. This time, I had my flowers ready. I was interviewed for Granada Reports when asking people why they'd come. I said it was to make amends for not giving her flowers 10 years ago. She didn't come my way, but I was just happy to see her again. The fourth and last time I saw her was just 1 year later in 2013. I was working in Harper Hay that day and she was opening the youth centre. Now, my mum died in 2010, aged 92. She didn't live to hear about me seeing Queen Elizabeth in 2012 and 13, but I know she'd have loved every minute of it. She'd have loved it too, me attending the Salford Proclamation and all the special church services. It's been an honour. My mum once asked me who I thought was our greatest monarch. My instant reply was, Queen Victoria. Her reply was, what about this Queen? Indeed. Those words have come into my head the past week. Yes, Queen Elizabeth II is up there with her great-great-grandmother, Queen Victoria. It's been my privilege to see in my lifetime the silver, the golden, the diamond and platinum jubilees. Elizabeth the Great, rest in peace. Long live the King.
Thank you, Councillor Brabenett. Could I have Councillor Saunders, please?
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, just for the record, the Queen began her reign 6 years before I was born, just for the avoidance of any doubt. Yeah. I too, like the previous speaker, have heard some wonderful speeches this morning, and I too am a royalist. I very often, Alf Garnett style, much to the amusement of my family, stand to attention when I hear the national anthem played, for example, at the end of the Radio 4 programmes at 1 o'clock in the morning, or when watching international sport, or the increasingly common gold medal winning Brits at Olympics and other international occasions. Or these days it's more likely sit to attention, because by the time I'd actually stand up it would probably be over. I've met the late Her Majesty the Queen several times, although I never actually had the honour of speaking to her, unlike some of the others that we've heard. I first met her in 1965, aged 7, when the Queen came down Bury New Road, near where I live, and all the pupils of the Broughton Jewish Primary School, where I was a pupil, lined the streets as the Queen came down Bury New Road. Funnily enough, she didn't stop to speak to me, but nevertheless I got to see her. Then, in 2002, I had the honour of being a chaplain at the Commonwealth Games, and again I got to see her, although never had the opportunity of speaking to her. In 2009, Her Majesty signed my commission into the armed forces as an officer, a padre, a chaplain of the armed forces. So unlike Councillor Merry, I didn't actually meet her personally to have it done, but to have it presented, but she did sign my commission statement, which is still one of my proudest possessions. In 2009, as the Jewish chaplain to the forces, I attended the service for the end of the war in Iraq, where I had the honour of actually sitting in front of the Queen as part of the clergy, and spent an hour literally watching the Queen straight face to face, but again, never got the opportunity of speaking to her. And later in 2010, like my colleague, Councillor Fletcher, I was honoured at being at the one of the Queen's garden parties. The Queen reigned for 70 glorious years, from coupons to COVID. She reigned with great majesty, dignity, humility, grace, modesty of action, thought and dress. Guided by a devotion to duty and public service, always informed by her great faith. She was the defender of the faith, but she always embraced all faiths, and she was a particular friend of the Jewish community and the 4 chief rabbis who served under her during her 70 years. She will be greatly missed. Rest in peace, Queen Elizabeth. God save King Charles.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. Could I have Councillor Lightner, please?
Thank you, Chair. We've heard since the passing of Her Majesty the Queen many stories about her, some inspiring stories. We've heard amusing stories. Sadly, I never had the privilege of meeting her in person, so I don't have any personal anecdotes, but I do wish to share a story about her. We've heard of Dr. Solomon Schonfeld, who during the Second World War, his great activities in saving thousands bringing them out of war-torn Europe, most famously the Kindertransport. And during those years, he paid a visit to King George, together with a well-known rabbi from London, known as the Shotzer Rebbe. His name was Rabbi Moskowitz, and they visited the King George VI to ask him to intervene and help them with their plans to bring out hundreds of children, many of them already orphans, who were destined to be taken out to the camps. And the king was very wary of intervening in government matters, but he did promise, after being pushed, he promised to do his utmost. In return, he asked the rabbis to bless his daughter, who at the time was gravely ill. And Rabbi Moskowitz told the king that in the merit of his help, in the merit of his efforts to help children, his daughter would surely have a full recovery and a long life. That daughter was Queen Elizabeth II, who indeed had a long and healthy and a very fulfilled life. That wasn't the end of the Queen's relationship with British Jewry. Throughout her reign, Jewish communities have not just flourished up and down the country, but have been made by Her Majesty to feel at home, to feel welcome, and she always went out of her way to visit communities. She took a great interest into the ways of life of various communities and was very interested in their customs, and she even made it a point to accommodate, sometimes changing her diary to accommodate their customs. As we mourn the loss of our sovereign, we shall ensure that her memory lives on by emulating her inclusiveness, her way of life, of accepting, and of course of her modesty and her humility and her devotion. At the age of 21, as we heard, she devoted her life to service, but it is us, her loyal subjects, who have served her for 70 years, and it is our duty to ensure that that legacy continues as we pledge our devotion to, as the torch is passed on to King Charles, and we pledge our devotion to him. For over 7 decades, in synagogues up and down this country, every Sabbath, a prayer has been said for Her Majesty the Queen. And as we start a new era, this prayer will now be said for King Charles, and we pray that God Almighty, the King of all kings, shall bless His Majesty King Charles III and all the royal family. God save the King.
Thank you, Councillor Lightner. Could I have Councillor Keeley, please?
Thank you, Chair. May I also follow the remarks by the City Mayor in thanking all of the council officers and council staff who have conducted themselves with good grace over the last few weeks. Council, Her Majesty was beyond reproach. She was part not of an organisation, not of a charity, nor of a group of individuals, but a part of British and Commonwealth culture. It is our identity, our principles, our way of living. And at the core of the royal family for 70 years was a person who glued the cracks and healed brokenness in a challenging post-war society for which she inherited. And at 25 years old, she took on one of the biggest and most recognisable jobs in the world. And speaking as a 25-year-old, I would probably not be able to take on that task at the moment. She succeeded through bringing communities together and reaching out to nations across the world. She'd always been there, at the back of our minds, and it is not wrong to assume she always would be. It is still a shock now that she is no longer there. The words she said all those decades ago that we have heard repeated many, many times over the last fortnight, dedicating her life to our service. She never broke her promise. Be it years before that as a mechanic in the Second World War, refusing to leave the country for which she loved, to appointing her 15th and her last Prime Minister. She was loved around the world, every continent. Her spirit is cherished. And as a leader of the Commonwealth, and as a mother, a grandmother and a great-grandmother, she was wise and graceful counsel. I'm reminded of a visit that she made to Worsley Village many years ago, which I am honoured to represent many decades. There was a decision taken, actually, to pour dye into the canal to make it blue. Instead, however, it turned to the colour of baked beans. But it summed up who they were, not just someone of high status, but of great stature. The steadfast stature of Our Majesty was one of fierce determination and fearless devotion. Leadership we will never achieve, but leadership we must aim to embrace. But as we mourn, and we will continue to, we must not forget her son, King Charles III, who I think will be an excellent monarch, alongside the Queen Consort as they step into this new role, taking on a job they knew were coming, but always dreaded the reason behind why. Now, in these years ahead, we must pray for King Charles and Camilla, Queen Consort, as they take on this new responsibility. And as we take steps to change our passports, our post boxes, our currency, our stamps, our badges, and our anthem, which councillors may have heard me already strum a few weeks ago with the new lyrics, we will not do so by rewriting history. We will do so to remember. And we must remember the monarch who led this country through division into stability. We must remember the monarch who fixed our motors through the shallowing rots of Nazism. We must remember, without contempt, one of the most unifying public figures in our great nation's history, defender of the faith, and our great Queen. We will remember, as Councillor Pravner put it, Elizabeth the Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Keeley. Could I have Councillor Amana Gola, please?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to pay my tribute to the late Queen Elizabeth II, who was not just the Queen of the United Kingdom, who was not just the head of the Commonwealth, but was the Queen of the world. While watching Sky News on Sunday, a lady who came from the United States, I think here, she said to the reporter, no one in the United States would make me lie for 14 hours like your Queen did, because She's not just your queen. She was not just your queen. She was everyone's queen. She was our queen. Queen Elizabeth was open to the world. In 1973, she actually welcomed the president of my country, the late President Mobutu at the time. He was received at Buckingham Palace with his wife. They stayed there for, I think, 3 days. He offered a banquet on their honor. Unfortunately, he deceived them a bit by smuggling a little dog into the palace, which of course angered the Queen. But we know that the Queen Elizabeth has never seen angry in public. So the Queen was open to the world. She made all of us welcome, feel welcome in this island. For us women, for us mother, Queen Elizabeth was the role model. She gave us rights. She inspired us. She was there looking at the Queen as a mother and of the head of the state was so emotional. To the Queen. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any other councillors wish to speak today? Just checking I haven't left anybody out. Yes, go ahead, thanks.
Thanks so much. Actually, I didn't intend to speak today because I thought there are very good speakers and it's great to hear them. But I couldn't resist myself to share my dilemma with you all about the Queen. Because I go abroad and I go to different countries. The first thing they will ask me, have you seen the Queen? And my question answer will be, oh yes. So say hello to her. So they think that, I see Queen every single day up and down the road. So this has been a dilemma for me because the Queen indeed was a great ambassador and great queen of this country but all over the world. And that's why the first thing the people will ask about the United Kingdom is the Queen. So she was indeed the one who was there representing us inside and outside the country. So I pay my respects to her because I haven't never seen her, but I kind of being in this country and going abroad and people ask me about the Queen, I feel related to her. So God save the King. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who would like to speak? Okay. Thank you. Just before we close, I'd just like to say it was also a great honour for me to do the accession proclamation here last week for King Charles. And I know he's got very big shoes to fill. It's an incredibly hard act to follow, but I thought it was really important that we had such a nice crowd turn out and across the whole nation, the whole Commonwealth. I thought it was beautiful when I looked at the Canadian, Australian and the New Zealand proclamations, because of course he's the king of all of those countries, that in that inclusivity of that ceremony they also had the chieftains of all the First Nations people, the indigenous people of those countries, who also paid their tributes to Queen Elizabeth and wished King Charles the best. So I just think that that is an incredible legacy that she's left, that inclusivity of all of the nations coming together like that, and we wish King Charles the best and long may he reign. So thank you everybody. That now concludes the business for today, and thank you very much for your attendance.